Now, when you get ready to start doing the stockings, let me move the camera back down. When you get ready to do the stockings, what I like to do to make sure that I've got them so that I can sew them wrong sides together when I finish, I lay them out on my table, okay, with the toes touching. Then I take the white strips, so 2 red stockings and 2 white strips. Because I tend to be a little OCD or something, I like to fold that strip in half because you're going to place that strip of white, half of it on the red and half of it off. There we go. Okay. Then the other thing I like to do is just pin it in place while I get ready to, so I'm ready to sew it. So again, you position that white. So half of the white is on the red stocking and half of it is off. Does that make sense? Okay, then once I've got that done, then I'm ready to, oops, wrong one. I'm now ready to stitch the white on. I'm sewing by hand. Some of you have wanted to use the sewing machine, and that is fine. If you've got a sewing machine and you're pretty good at using it, please go ahead. But I know many of you may not have a machine. So what I'm doing is I will be demonstrating by hand, okay? All right, so I've gone ahead and knotted just tied a knot at the end of my thread. Pretty easy to do. You just okay. Now the other thing I do if I don't knot, I like to take a couple of small stitches when I start. That way I don't have that knot sticking on the back of whatever it is I'm sewing. Now you're going to be doing what's called a stab stitch or a running stitch. Now I'm using a thimble because I learned to sew with a thimble, but also because bringing the needle up through the 2 layers of fleece can get a little hard. So a stab stitch, I'm just stabbing the needle back down into the fabric. And this is not your grandmother, great-grandmother's beautiful, even quilting stitches, okay? So this is a stab stitch. A running stitch, on the other hand, and it's the one I prefer to do because in my mind, it goes a little faster. The running stitch, you're going to pick up, put the point of your needle down through, okay? So the point of the needle is going to go down into the fabric. Then I'm not going to do the stab stitch. I'm not going to take it all the way through. I'm just going to kind of take a bite out of the fabric, if you will. So it just has doubled up on my needle. And I'm not going to pull that through yet. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try and keep my needle. I'm using the tip of my needle, oh, come on, the tip of my needle to kind of determine about where that next stitch, where I need to take my needle back into the fabric. Okay, this is a running stitch. So I'm taking, just now I took 2 stitches at once. Okay. So again, I take the point of my needle down to the back, come back up on the top. I take the needle back down, and then I'm going to come back up to the top of the fabric. And you continue that all the way across that white, okay? Once you have both pieces stitched like that, have the white piece stitched on, then you go ahead and, like I say, you put wrong sides together. So you've got your white here on the top, and you line up your stocking. And I like to go ahead and pin that stocking in a couple of places so it keeps the edge together. Okay? Now, once I've done that, I'm ready to sew the stocking and the top together. So I've started my stitch right here on the white, just to catch this very top edge of the stocking. And then I go ahead, again, stab stitch or running stitch. Now I'm using heavier thread than what you guys have in your kit. Heavier thread and a thicker needle. But if I use the sewing thread that you guys have in your kit, you wouldn't be able to see it in the demonstration. So that's why I'm using this thread. You have, I think it's quilting thread, but regular sewing thread will work just fine, okay? So your needles are a little thinner and your thread is not this thick. Okay, and you just continue that way all the way around the stocking. Now when I finish, and I'm just going to go in here to do this, and I can take it out later. So I'm going to bury my tie off. I'm going to bury my tie off or knot at the end. I'm going to bury it inside. Now, I'm doing this on the stocking and making a full stocking. It's going to be right up here after I've stitched all the way around. And I'm going to come back up here and take that tie off stitch. And I tie off the same way that I started it. I'm going to take just a couple of small stitches and trying to put one on top of the other. And that's going to lock those stitches in place. Okay, so it's not coming apart there. And that's all there is to making the stocking. You don't worry about these edges on the white, because for one thing, Jillian needs to have this open enough that she can get the candy in, okay? And the child can get their hands in there and get the candy back out. So we don't worry about stitching together these two ends. it's just stitch the white on the red and then just stitch the red, the two stockings together all the way around. What questions do any of you have? That was a pretty quick demonstration, but really, guys, that's all there is to it. So any questions at all?
What is the goal for how many are going to be made?
We're trying to beat last year's record.
Mhm.
Okay.
What was it? What was last year's?
Caitlin, do you remember?
We did 100 and something. I think it's like 105.
105, 110, somewhere in there, I think.
Okay, so will you keep us updated, Montana, on the amount so we know? Like if you need additional ones made.
For sure. I don't necessarily know if we're going to beat that goal this year just because we have less members and less ability to do them this year because COVID and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I can let everyone know. Pretty much if people would like, we have everything that we have cut out for all the members, but if someone would like to cut more and do that, then I will not stop folks from doing that.
I believe right now we're at like 80
Something.
85.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically what the officers did was look at the number of members, and they did 5 stockings per member to make, and then added some additional ones.
Okay.
Yeah, we added I think 30 extra, and all of those got picked up. So
Yeah. And like I say, I have a few. I know some of the new members may not have been able to get stockings to make them. And if you want to get an email to Montana, so one of us, probably me, will come in and cut some more out so that you've got, I'll try and get you 5, but it might be 3 a piece or something like that, and I'll twist the officer's arms that that's as good as that's your freebie for being a new member, okay?